Hello, good evening. Welcome to Brothers of MGTOW. I be your host, a brother of MGTOW, and in this episode, episode 19, we are going to talk about individual morality, okay, with respect to MGTOW. So, what is individual morality? Individual morality, in my terms, is where I do things or I sort of make life choices that are right by my book, as opposed to the opposite of individual morality is collective morality, where you do where your choices should affect should be done right by the book of the collective. Or when you talk about the collective, it really means society or government or just a group of people. Okay, this is something that goes at the heart of the conservative versus liberal debate. So the left wing versus right wing politics stuff. I'm sort of going to avoid that. I'm just going to talk simply in terms of doing things by your book as opposed to doing things by society's book. And that's sort of where I sort of want to touch on today. Okay. The way I look at it as well, sort of if you want to look at it from an objectivist point of view, if you are an Ayn Rand fan, or someone who supports Ayn Rand's philosophies, if you haven't read her books, I'm obviously trying to get my PhD done, so I'm trying to get around to doing it, but it's hard. But I do watch a fair bit of Yaron Brook stuff. By the way, Yaron Brook is the head of the Ayn Rand Institute in America, sort of that Ayn Rand think tank. What what really goes at the heart of Ayn Rand's philosophy is that your choices are rational if and only if they maximize your self-interest, right? So the notion of rational self-interest. Okay. Now, why is I guess the big question now is sort of why is this relevant to MGTOW? I think part of MGTOW. Now, obviously, for me personally, it's very hard for me to detach from society, which is sort of what a lot of MGTOWs sort of aspire to do, sort of detach from themselves from this gynocentric society, which it is in reality. Let's be honest, right? So they tend to detach themselves from this society, and sort of they can either live off the grid or they just avoid the opposite gender altogether. But I think more importantly, it's not. I think doing that is a bit extreme. I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad choice. I'm just saying that's sort of the extremes that some MGTOW people go to. But I think at the heart of MGTOW is the fact that your choices, your life choices, should no longer be about benefiting society. Some people say you do it for validation in some sense. So you're not doing that's sort of what collective morality is about. Your actions, right, is about benefiting society altogether, as opposed to benefiting yourself. So I guess good examples of collective morality. Just the mere notion of marriage is an act of collective morality because you are benefiting society by increasing the population when you have kids, by taking care of others, specifically women, which obviously benefits society because women deserve to be protected. You know that feminist lie they always tell you about. Women are special snowflakes, treat them as one. What a fucking joke. Another video. I've done that. I've done this already. So, I guess at that heart, you know, Likewise, collective morality is very closely associated to social justice, right? Doing things for the benefit of society, maintaining fairness for society. Another example would be sort of performing work. Although I'll sort of get onto this, I'll talk about the individual morality of work soon, but the collective morality of work is you are contributing to the society in a sense, right? Which is, I think, doing it that way, again, when you sort of give yourself up to collective morality, what you are really doing is you're sort of saying, I'm sacrificing my sense of self. I am sacrificing, how do I put it, my utility for the greater good. Now, that's all fair and good, to be honest. There's nothing fundamentally wrong about it. But when we talk about, when everyone says go MGTOW, when you find MGTOW, part of MGTOW is that transition from emphasizing collective morality to emphasizing individual morality, which is sort of where I am at. Okay. I think sort of part of this journey of going MGTOW for the last few months has been about me, I guess, the fundamental understanding that I was put on this earth to maximize my self-interest, to create a sense of individual morality, right? So what I guess I haven't fully covered that, which is sort of what I want to do, right? So I want to steer away from this notion of collective morality, which society does a very good job of promoting, to something that is sort of not only ridiculed or vilified, but sort of shunned upon, which is the notion of individual morality. Now, obviously, individual morality can sometimes come across as selfishness, although in general it doesn't. Okay? Because, as I'll say soon, when you maximize your self-interest, you have the capacity to maximize others' self-interests. Okay? And that's the beauty of individual morality. Because when you attain sort of maximal self-interest, not only that will actually lead to a good sense of collective morality. I wouldn't say that. That's actually quite bad. That's sort of not what I meant. But what I mean is that other people will see you with a high sense of individual morality, and they will look upon you. They will respect you for who you are from there. Okay? So, I guess now the question is, what does individual morality involve? So, as I said, the fundamental building block is that you do things that are right by your book. So, individual morality is about being free in your own skin. You are no longer shackled to society's expectations, right, of who you are, what you have to be, and you decide. So when you grow up, you decide what are the things that have worked for me, what are the things that have not worked for me. The things that have not worked, you sort of say, look, either you cut your losses, abandon them, whatever. And then the things that have worked for you, keep that going. Maintain a certain constant. Obviously people go through change a lot, but when you have a sense of individual morality, those changes don't have to be drastic. You can let the change be natural. But at heart, you have maintained a core, an individual core. And I guess that's sort of the fundamental part of individualism is you need to you need to build up the core. And I don't mean physical core, but I mean emotional, mental, spiritual core, right? So what it involves as well is, so obviously I've talked about doing things right by your book, so not shackled to society's expectations, but also just having the freedom to express yourself, no matter the consequences, right? You're not when you attain a sense of individual morality, you don't care about trying to impress other people. You don't care about putting your place in society, but rather when you build this core, you teach yourself to stay grounded on your own principles, based on your own experiences, your learnings, your teachings, your as well your principles, your fundamentals, what you're good at, to playing along with your strengths and weaknesses. So it really involves trying to build up that core and maintain it. And this is sort of what the problem with collective morality is, that when you don't have that core, right? When you're sort of in that mindset where society dictates how you should be, when you don't have that core, it's very hard because it changes. It's like, think of it as like a mold, like a Play-Doh, You can sort of push it, you can bend it, stretch it, sorry. You can bend it, you can stretch it. That core is open to change, and especially in the collective morality sense, it's changing at such a rapid pace, you don't know who you are. You don't know who you truly are, what you're truly made to do. Okay? Whereas with individual morality, you're like a bowling ball. Smooth, solid, heavy. You know, you're not, how do I put this? Like, you're not open to be bent to society's will. You're not open to being stretched in such a drastic way, right? Pushed, pulled, you know what I'm trying to get at. And that's sort of at the heart of MGTOW, right? This is, I guess, the classic MGTOW advice is build a career for yourself, I mean, I've probably one of the lucky few people to have found, I guess, my home career-wise. Obviously, I'm always flexible for change, but at the same time, I need to understand that I need to make money. So at least I have this core set of passions, and I guess I said I'm one of the lucky few to be at a position where my passions and my job lines up very well, right? And this is, as I said, why I can't detach myself from society right now is my job involves me to interact with society, to connect with society. And doing that, this is sort of where I wanted to get at. Doing that requires a high sense of individual morality. Okay? So this is sort of what I wanted to get at. So I guess once you have a high sense of individual morality, the collective morality naturally follows. And this is the beauty of building yourself up. I guess what MGTOW say, go lift or go get the cash, something like that. When you work for money, build a career, build a life out of yourself, pursue your interests and hobbies. Do it for your self-interest, do it for you and only for you, not for society's expectations. When you do things like this, right, obviously you will become naturally confident, especially if you're passionate about it. And that shows when you give back to society, which is sort of what I do. I'll talk about it a bit more detail once I sort of go through the whole rational self-interest examples. Okay, how it applies to me. So, yeah, so I was talking about individual morality naturally leads to collective morality. Okay, so when you've built that foundation, so for example, when you start earning six-figure salaries, when you start becoming rich, when you are grounded in what you love in terms of your hobbies and self-interests, when you do that, then you are at a position, you're sort of at a high. And I guess this is sort of where we sort of see this is where we have a fork in the road. You can go one or two ways. Now, a lot of people who don't have a sense of individual morality, when they are at that point, they tend to sort of take the arrogance path, the stuck up. I wouldn't say stuck up, but the path where when they have a lack of individual morality, they're not grounded enough to understand that you got to maintain that position. So they start doing things that they shouldn't be doing. I guess the best example in the MGTOW sense is start chasing tail. Doesn't, it'll ruin them. Most MGTOW men know that. So when you got to go to that point, then you're being manipulated by the hive mentality of the collective. And as I said, you're open to being pushed, pulled, twisted, stretched, bended. You're open to that. And you have a lot more to lose than the second fork in the road, which is sort of what I try to do. And as a conservative myself, which I have outed myself recently in the past couple of weeks, we want to keep things as it is, maintain some sort of homeostasis in our lives. So once we sort of become rich, the natural thing we can do is find a way to give back or find a way to maintain our sense of individual morality. Me personally, my sense of individual morality naturally coming to collective morality comes from charity. I'm that type of person that naturally loves to give back. And this is sort of what I'm doing with my job, right? Now, I'm a pure mathematician, PhD at the moment, but I also do teaching on the side. And that's sort of, I guess, my fundamental passion. Being able to give back my knowledge to people who who need it, right? And I'm doing it for the money as well, not only for the money. So I love what I do. My sense of individual morality coming from teaching, right? What I'm doing is I'm teaching these students. I obviously need to do it because I need to earn money somehow. But at the same time, I am, how do I put it? What's the right word? I'm not exploiting is a bad word. Yeah, okay, I'll say exploited, but in a good sense. So in a good way, I am exploiting my sense of charity that is built in me through my individual morality to give back, you know, to allow people to gain more knowledge. Okay, and this sort of leads to my last point with this stuff. So when it comes to really maximizing your self-interest, okay. So being selfish is good in a sense. So being selfish for the right reasons is good. And that's sort of, I guess, something that many MGTOWs find it hard to come to terms with. I guess that when you have that high sense of individual morality, it's much easier to come to terms with it because at the end of the day, you know what needs to be done. You know what is right by your book, right? So what does that mean when you maximize your self-interest? So part of being selfish here, right? So we're talking about things like pursuing your own hobbies. You give up time, right, to invest in it, to develop your love for it. But what you get out of it is a sense of happiness, right? Something that obviously can't be bought. Obviously, time can't be bought as well, but your happiness is much more important, even if it costs you time. Making a career out of yourself without a woman on your back, or probably your ass, or sniffing your bank account. When you do that, right? So I'm trying to get the right words again here. So when you pursue your career, pursue your hobbies, you're sacrificing a little bit to gain a lot. So you've done that cost benefit analysis, right? You realize that in the future, you know your potential is very high. And this is the thing about MGTOW, you know. When you do go MGTOW, so sorry, sorry about that. Just trying to do something. Okay, so when you do go MGTOW, you really don't realize that the ceiling, there is no ceiling for you. Whereas if you have a woman on your back, sniffing your bank accounts, living in your house, driving one of your cars that you own, your ceiling is really limited when you do that. But when you feel free, when you feel at peace with yourself, you are you realize that you have no ceiling. So you just do the things that maximize your self-interest. So being selfish is okay. And that's sort of what I'm trying to get at when we talk about maximizing your self-interest. Doing things just for the sake of you is perfectly fine. As long as I said, it maximizes your self-interest, right? And I guess the last question that comes about is, does that mean that we should harm others? Oftentimes, it doesn't. Oh, obviously, it shouldn't, but oftentimes it actually doesn't. So there's always a win-win situation when you think about the cost outweighing the when you think about the cost-benefit analysis. The benefits always outweigh the costs, and not only that, the benefits for other people outweigh the costs. So I guess the best example, I guess I'm going to use Yaron Brooks' example when he talks about this win-win, this whole win-win situation when you balance cost and benefits. So suppose you want to buy an iPhone from the Apple Store somewhere. Okay? Say the iPhone costs $1,000, just hypothetically. So suppose the iPhone costs $1,000. How much is it worth to Apple? And how much is it worth to you? So to Apple, it is worth $1,000. Their self-interest comes from you spending your money for their products. Okay? So the iPhone is worth $1,000 to Apple. Okay? Actually, the iPhone is actually worth less than $1,000 to Apple because they're trying to make a profit on their product. It's actually worth less. But the fact that they're pricing it at $1,000, they actually get more. So they're already winning. Okay, so they've spent less than $1,000, and they're actually getting $1,000 when someone buys it. Now, let's sort of shift that back to the buyer, you the buyer. How much will you spend on it? It says $1,000, so that's the physical value. What is its intrinsic value? Now, you need the iPhone, right? It's a smartphone. It can do almost everything that you could ever imagine it to do. You can check your bank accounts on it. You can call people. You can text people. So you have that social connection. You also have, you can play games on it. You can do all sorts of things on the iPhone. So to you, it could be worth much more than $1,000. So the fact that you are only spending $1,000 for something that is worth more than $1,000, way more, you also win out of that. Okay? So let's sort of go back to the example of pursuing your hobbies. Suppose, let's say, I'm just trying to think of a hobby that, I'm just trying to think something on the top of my head. So sort of what I'm doing in recently, sort of aside from my PhD, I'm sort of watching videos about conservatism, just general politicking. Let's just say watching videos, okay, on these things. So what am I giving up? I'm giving up a lot of time. Let's say I'm giving up time, okay? So what's it worth to me? Physically, it's worth the amount of time that I invest in it. Okay? Physically, that's what it is. Intrinsically, it's actually worth a lot more than that because I am trying to learn more about the world. I'm trying to learn more about things that are relevant to me. So its intrinsic value to me is close to priceless. So I have priced my investment in watching these videos about conservatism, politics, just general educational stuff when I price that. Okay? It will be worth at the end a lot more. Likewise, when I make these YouTube videos, to me it's just worth the time, to you, it's probably just worth the time investment to watch these videos. But obviously you want to learn more about what I'm trying to say. So intrinsically, you watching these videos, or me making these videos for you, it's worth a lot more than what you priced it to be, which is just an investment of your time. So think of it as that example. And individual morality is part of developing a sense of individual morality is that it is okay to, how do I put it? It is okay to be selfish and pursue things that maximize your self-interest. I guess the whole ethics of it is whether that should come at a cost of other things, right? So when you do the cost-benefit analysis, oftentimes when you are MGTOW, oftentimes it's always a positive sum game when you do these things. The only time when it becomes a negative sum game is when you start pursuing women. That's probably the only, or bowing down to society's expectations. That's the other one. So once you do one of those two things, those are the only two things in MGTOW where you will end up worse off. Okay? So I'm going to pretty much finish it up here. So at the end of the day, I guess the fundamental building block of MGTOW is that shift from the hive mind collective mindset, right? The collective hive mind mindset. Shifting from that to a sense of individualism, or I think a lot of what people call it. It's a process of self-actualization. Okay, and part of that is understanding that it is perfectly okay to pursue a sense of individual morality. And in fact, once you get to that point, once you have developed that high sense of it, a high degree, the sense of it to a higher degree, you realize that it is much more important to have an individual, to have a sense of individualism, sense of individual morality, as opposed to a collective morality. Okay, so I'm going to end it here, guys. Thanks for watching, and just don't forget, MGTOW.